minor dispute with him to be an understatement. I'm actually going to court tomorrow about it. In reference to some work, I'm a contractor, or was a contractor, and did some work for him on some of his properties. And there's a dispute over work that wasn't done supposedly, and that his house was demolished and all kinds of things. But I've had a lot of dealings with him over the last year and a half, and nothing's ever been, I've never gotten a real warm and fuzzy feeling from the guy. Yeah, I'll give you kind of a quick rundown of what we're going to court tomorrow. He has a bunch of rental properties, as I'm sure you're probably aware of.
Yes.
And he had bought one at an auction in Baltimore, and it was, I mean, when I say a shell, that's an understatement. And he had contracted myself to clean it out, to do some demo work, and basically get it so that it could be remodeled. And did all the work, he filled out a little contract as far as agreement on, what work would be done, so on and so forth. Did all the work, complied to the dates of which he had said that, if work isn't done by this date, you're only going to get X amount of money out of the deal. If it's done by this date, you're only going to, if it wasn't done by a certain date. So everything was done on time. Actually, I'm sorry, it was done, but he didn't pay us on time. But that was okay. It was agreed that there was going to be, a few weeks, there was going to be a week or so in between the time of when I was going to see him and so on and so forth. So we met at the location, at the property. He paid the balance in full for the work that was done. At that point, he wanted to quote on some other work additionally that needed to be done. And it was way more than what he wanted to spend. So, being that I'm working on another one of his houses for him at the time, I said, we can revisit it after we're finished the current project and the other house in Washington, D.C. And he said, that's fine. And so we worked on the other house all along. I finished that project and hadn't heard from him. All of a sudden, he sends me and my fiance, he sends us a civil suit that he's suing us, that none of the work was done. And he said all this stuff, and I come to find out that the house was being demolished by the city because the work hadn't been done, because he had owned the house for too long and it was in condemned status and nobody could live there. So he didn't get the house ready to be lived in quick enough in order for the city to not demolish it. Because it was like, in no way, shape, or form somebody could live there. It didn't have running water.
Which one was it? Was it the one on Gay Street? Give me the address if you know the.
Yeah, it's the one on Gay Street. Yes, tomorrow's just a preliminary, because it's a civil suit. It's a preliminary type of a thing. I'm not sure all technical, legal. Well, the house on Gay Street, I paid out of my pocket because my guys wouldn't go in the house. They wouldn't go in the place because there was rats. There was a rat that was, the size of a small dog that we found dead in the basement that was killed by something else. So I had to pay out of my pocket. I had to pay an exterminator to come in and just, kill off the rats that were there. And then, my God, they wouldn't go inside the house. There was rats. It was disgusting. So I paid out of pocket. I paid a couple $100 to a guy that I knew that did exterminations to come in and, kill the rats initially. And then I went and just got, rat poison to put around in the basement and that kind of thing in the place. Because it was in the place was in such disrepair that, it was going to take a lot more than, what he was figuring would cost, $10,000 or $12,000 to fix the whole place up. And then we're talking like $20,000 or $30,000 worth of work.
Gotcha.
So it was a complete disaster, that house. And he didn't want to invest the money into it. And even the other thing on my side of it that my fiance and I are going to court about is we were at around this and that, and, all things that he didn't want to spend the money to fix the place up. He wanted to get around all those things. So it was, it was all very, very shady. And then he wrote the check for the balance of the work that was owed. And then, 3.5 months later, we get a lawsuit. And then on top of that, he came to where we used to live. He came, was harassing us, banging on the door. I had to call the police to get him to leave us alone. He told me things that he had done to previous tenants or, people that didn't pay rent on time and all kinds of crazy stuff that he had done to, people that...
Did he tell you that he took someone's door off?
Yes, he told me something he had tied with a rope or a chain or something to somebody's door and drove off with it and ripped the doors off the hinges. And well, all I know is after I had done work for him initially at a house on Bryant Street in D.C., after I had done work there the first time, something with him just didn't seem, I don't know, I just didn't get a warm and fuzzy feeling from him.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my workers, who he had done some research behind it, just typing his name into Google, not really doing any deep background research, and he forwarded me the link to the website that I got your number from. This was a long, long time ago, and I just kind of said, I'm not getting involved with this guy on a personal level in any way, shape, or form. So,
right.
As long as his checks are clearing, I'm not going to make a big stink and get involved in this guy's drama in his life.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of got worse and worse because every time you talked to him, he had some sort of fantastic story that he was getting involved with. And then, I had read, a couple of weeks ago, I had read the part about, the insurance fraud and all that kind of stuff. And it made me start thinking about, he had told me up in Baltimore on Gay Street where he had gotten into a car accident in his car and that he had broke his hip or some crazy thing, and he didn't talk to me, and I didn't hear from him for 3 or 4 weeks. And I kept calling him, and he said, I was in the hospital, or I was doing this, or I was doing that. And everything was, he had hurt his hip, and, he had to go to physical therapy and all this crazy stuff about his car. And then I saw his car, and there was nothing wrong with his car. So, and I had asked him, I said, did you ever get your car fixed? Because, being that I've done so much work for him, I know where he lives and been to his house. And
all right, so you're saying that after you did all the work on the houses, he turned around and he's suing you to try to recover what he lost from the house being torn down?
Basically, he's suing me for what he paid me to do all the work, saying that none of the work was done. And he included photos of stuff inside in the lawsuit as examples of stuff that wasn't done.
But he took the photos before the work was completed.
Basically, yes. That, and he took photos of nothing that was actually contracted to do, and he never included the agreement that he and I signed together. He never included that with the lawsuit, which I have copies of, obviously, and copies of the checks and all that kind of good stuff from, dates when he said, if the work isn't done by, X date, you're only going to get paid X amount of money. And it was paid after the date of when, all this work was supposed to be done. He paid me the full amount.
Right.
Because the work was done. And he wrote in the memo on the check, work completed.
You have that.
I